You reach for the shaker without thinking. A pinch on your eggs, a dash in your soup, a handful into the pot before the water even boils. You don't question it. Your ancestors did. For most of human history, salt wasn't a seasoning sitting quietly on a table. It was survival. Getting it could cost you weeks of travel, dangerous trade routes, or your life. Entire settlements were built and fortified around it. Wars were fought over it. And yet, for a huge stretch of human evolution, nobody needed to think about it at all. So when did humans actually start eating salt on purpose? The answer is stranger than you'd expect, and it starts long before farming, long before cities, long before anyone thought to write anything down. Your body needs sodium to function. Your nerves fire because of it. Your muscles contract because of it. Your kidneys, your blood pressure, your hydration, all of it depends on a careful sodium balance. Without enough, your cells stop communicating properly, and eventually your organs shut down. This isn't a modern discovery. It's a biological fact that shaped human evolution for millions of years, quietly, in the background, long before anyone had a word for it. Here's the twist. Early humans didn't need to add salt to their diet at all. If you eat raw meat, blood, organs, and bone marrow, you're already getting sodium naturally, in generous amounts. Meat is salty. Blood is salty. Organ meat especially carries a strong sodium content. For hunter-gatherers eating an animal-heavy diet, sodium deficiency was rarely a real problem. Salt cravings, in the way we understand them today, essentially didn't exist yet, because the body was already getting what it needed without effort. Researchers who study ancient diets through bone chemistry, including work using collagen isotope analysis, pioneered by scientists like Michael Richards, have shown that many early hunter-gatherer populations relied heavily on animal protein. That single fact matters more than it sounds. It means their sodium intake was built into their meals automatically, hidden inside every kill, every scavenged carcass, every drop of blood. So what changed? Agriculture changed everything. Around 10,000 years ago, in different regions of the world, humans began shifting away from hunting and gathering and toward farming grain, growing vegetables, and eventually raising dairy animals for milk instead of just meat. Plants contain far less sodium than meat and blood. Grains in particular are almost devoid of it. Suddenly, communities that had never once worried about salt were facing a real physiological gap, one that widened with every generation that leaned further into farming. This is where the story of salt as a deliberate human pursuit truly begins. Researchers studying this shift point to Central and Southeastern Europe as one of the earliest hotspots for organized salt production. French archaeologist Olivier Weller, who has spent decades studying the archaeology of salt exploitation across Europe, has documented some of the earliest known evidence of humans deliberately extracting salt rather than simply consuming it as part of a meal. One of the clearest examples comes from Poiana-Slatinei, a site in present-day Romania. Here, archaeologists found evidence that people were boiling salty spring water in clay pots as far back as roughly 8,000 years ago. Let that sink in. Before writing. Before the wheel. Before most of the technologies we associate with civilization. Humans were already engineering a process to extract pure salt from brine, tending fires for hours, watching water evaporate, collecting the white residue left behind. Why go through that effort? Because once a community commits to farming, it commits to a diet that no longer sustains it, the way hunting once did. A village relying on wheat, barley, and vegetables needed another sodium source, and nature doesn't hand it over easily. Salt has to be pulled from seawater, scraped from mineral deposits, or boiled out of brine springs, drop by painstaking drop, hour after hour, fire after fire. This wasn't a one-time discovery. It happened again and again, independently in different places, by different groups who had never met each other and shared no common language. In Bulgaria, archaeologists uncovered a settlement called Provadia-Solnitsata, sometimes described as one of the oldest prehistoric town-like structures found in Europe. The name itself gives it away. Solnitsata roughly translates to the salt pit. Excavations led by Bulgarian archaeologist Vasil Nikolov revealed massive salt production facilities dating back nearly 7,500 years, complete with furnaces, thick fortification walls, and evidence of organized, coordinated labor. Think about that for a moment. A fortified settlement, built specifically to protect a salt operation. That tells you something crucial. Salt wasn't just useful. It was valuable enough to defend, valuable enough to build walls around, valuable enough to organize an entire community's labor toward producing it. And once something becomes valuable enough to defend, it becomes valuable enough to trade. Salt routes began stretching across ancient landscapes, connecting places that had no other reason to interact. Communities near coastlines or mineral springs found themselves sitting on a resource that inland farming villages desperately needed. Salt could preserve meat and fish for months, turning a seasonal harvest into a year-round food supply. That single property, preservation, transformed salt from a biological necessity into an economic engine that shaped entire regions. So let's reconstruct a scene. Imagine a small farming village, 7,000 years ago, somewhere in the hills of southeastern Europe. The autumn harvest is in. Grain sits stored in clay pits, but meat spoils fast, and winter is long, cold, and unforgiving. A trader arrives from the coast, or from a nearby brine spring settlement, carrying dense white blocks wrapped in leather and hide. In exchange, the village offers grain, tools, or woven cloth. That trade wasn't a luxury. It was the difference between a village that survived the winter and one that quietly starved before spring. Further west, similar patterns emerge. In the mountains of what is now Austria, the ancient salt mines near Hallstatt reveal an entire prehistoric mining culture built almost entirely around extracting rock salt from deep underground. Preserved wooden tools, leather bags, and even remarkably well-kept human remains have been recovered from these mines, offering archaeologists a rare, detailed look at how seriously ancient communities took the pursuit of salt and how sophisticated their extraction methods eventually became. Here's the counterintuitive twist. You'd think something this essential to survival would have been abundant and easy to access. It wasn't. Salt was often scarce, labor-intensive to produce, and unevenly distributed across the ancient world. Some regions had salt springs, coastal salt flats, or underground deposits. Others had absolutely nothing nearby. That imbalance created some of the earliest long-distance trade networks in human history, centuries before anyone was trading metal tools or drafting written contracts. This is also where salt starts shaping human culture, not just human biology. In many ancient societies, salt became a form of currency, a marker of wealth, even a diplomatic tool between rival groups. Some historians have pointed out that Roman soldiers were, at times, partially compensated with salt allowances, which is where the word salary likely traces its roots, from the Latin word for salt. Whether or not soldiers were literally paid in salt blocks is still debated among historians, but the linguistic connection alone reflects just how deeply salt was tied to value and worth in the ancient mind, so much so that the concept of earning a wage still carries its name today. So think about the arc here. Salt starts as an invisible part of a bloody, meat-heavy diet, something early humans never had to think about because it was already built into every meal. Then agriculture strips that away, slowly, generation by generation. Then humans, in isolated pockets across the world, independently figure out how to extract it through fire, patience, and boiling brine, or through digging deep into mountains for buried deposits. Then it becomes valuable enough to fortify, valuable enough to trade across enormous distances, and eventually valuable enough to monetize entirely. None of this happened because someone decided salt tasted good. It happened because a farming diet quietly created a biological deficit, and humans, driven by a craving they couldn't fully explain or articulate, solved it with remarkable, independent ingenuity again and again across continents that had no contact with one another. And that craving never left you. Right now, in a supermarket stocked with more sodium than any hunter-gatherer could ever imagine, your brain still lights up at the taste of salt the same way it did for a farmer in Neolithic Bulgaria protecting a walled salt furnace, or a miner deep inside the tunnels at Hallstatt. The instinct is ancient. The abundance is not. Modern diets often contain far more sodium than our bodies evolved to expect, not because we crave danger, but because that craving was shaped in a world of true scarcity. A world where a single pinch of salt could mean the difference between a preserved winter food supply and a slow, quiet starvation. So the next time you reach for the shaker without thinking, remember what it took to get there. Thousands of years of boiling brine over open fires. Fortified settlements built to protect it. Deep mountain tunnels dug to extract it. Trade routes carved out just to move it from coast to hillside, from mine to marketplace. Wars, at times, fought over it. You don't question it. Your ancestors did. And the answer they found still sits, quietly, on your table.